Good evening, good people. Welcome to the Power Hour show. This is the show where we are talking running, we are talking runners, different subjects every Wednesday night or Sunday night, and different guests to help us navigate those topics, as well as hear their own personal stories relative to the theme of the evening. Tonight, I am joined by a Great Britain athlete, within cross country. And our subject of discussion here is running injuries. Unfortunately, because of what running is, it does invite injuries along the way. And so to help me do that, I have a wonderful colleague here, James. James, welcome to the show.
Hassan, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, good. Before we get to before we get to the topic of running injuries, an athlete, and you are a physiotherapist. Who else better to share some of these the issues around this contentious subject of running injuries. But before we get there, could you just briefly tell us who James McMurray is and how you got involved in athletics?
So middle distance runner. So I run 1,500 meters, 800 meters up to 10K. I've been running since I was 10, so about 15 years now. I first started getting into running when I joined St Albans AC. I won like a district cross country race that, and then I won the district cross country race. My PE teacher suggested I'd go and join St Albans, so I did. And here I am.
Yeah. And tell us what your journey was like, from a youth athlete through to the clubs and onto the international scene in cross country. How did that? What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, it was good. So when I first started, it was a bit of fun. Like, it was something I was good at when I was a kid, so I thought I'd give it a go because I was successful doing it. And then as I sort of worked my way up through the age groups, I realised I'm got a bit of talent, so I might as well keep doing it. And then once I got to about 17, actually a bit older than that, about 18, 19, it was I went for a bit of a dodgy patch where I realised it's actually quite hard to be the best all the time. And then at that moment, I realised that it's not going to be so easy. Then it sort of brought out my love for running, so I realised I was doing it because I enjoyed it, not just because I was winning. And then came through a few dodgy patches, and then last year I managed to run for DB. If you stick to it when it's a bit dodgy, you can still be successful.
Yeah, that's good. Now you've represented Great Britain in a team event. Could you just tell us about your experiences with that one?
Yeah, so it was in December last year in Portugal. I competed in the European Cross Country Championships for Team GB. It was like a relay team in a cross country race, so it was a bit different. It was a mixed relay, so there were 2 guys and 2 girls, all doing a 1 mile leg each, and I was on the second leg, and then we basically do a mile each, racing different countries in Europe.
Yeah, let's have a look at snippets from that race, and maybe we can.
I think they get up to kind of 60, 70,000 people. It's kind of a bowl, if you like, and I know that the different distances we're going to be competing today, all of them are on take the big long lap. Here you see the under 20 men, they're going to go first with 4 long laps. Start and finish straight is about 125 meters long. There is a short lap which will be added to a couple of the races as well to make up the distance, but it's pretty undulating. And if you
Now, cross country is among many other things. It's all about conquering the terrain.
Yeah.
What was this like for you and your teammates there in Portugal?
Yeah, no, it was quite hard. I think it was harder for the first leg, first lady who was running, because the start was really sandy. I don't know why. which he's put like the sand at the start. The start hill was like really sandy, so when you're running through it, it just drained your legs straight away. But luckily, where I was starting was sort of a bit after that, so I missed all that sandy bit. So when I was running, it was quite, it was just like grass. It's quite hard grounds, which it suited me. But the thing about this course it was really hilly, so the hill was kind of at the start, and then it'll work its way back down. You have to make sure you could sort of run quick at the start without killing yourself off, and then leave yourself some at the end. So yeah, it's quite technical, a lot of corners. And again, like steep hills, no mud, so that was the one benefit that I guess I had. Being a track runner anyway.
Yeah, all right. How many relays are a fantastic event, you know, in athletics and on the track. But over, you know, in cross country, you know, what is that like? You know, on the track, people are exchanging the relay button. What's happening in cross country? How different is it?
Yeah, it's different. I think it's with track relay, kind of everyone's together at the same time. Whereas when it comes to cross country relay, you know, you can have like massive vast gaps, and there could be a bit more variation and like variation between the levels of runners. So you know, you could be in the lead in one leg, but then a different runner behind you could, you know, catch up 10, 15, 20 seconds. So it's kind of hard tactically to know exactly where you are in the race. And then with the track changeover, they had like a sweatband. So it was basically just a sweatband. So you had to try and hold this thing on your hand the whole race without, you know, dropping it or falling. If you fall over, you have to make sure you pick it up. Not that I fell over. And then to get it like kind of out your hand and then into the other person's hand that you're handing over. Because obviously in a sprint, you've got a button, so it's a bit easy to pass it in.
Yeah.
This was just like a flimsy like sweatband, and you know, you're running down a hill like really fast and you're absolutely knackered and you have to try and get this sweatband over. It's quite challenging. We're not sprinters, so we don't practice this kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Now, tell me, is it not permissible then to take this sweatband and just roll it up your arm so you can focus on your running?
Yeah, no, some people did that, but I don't know. I kind of had it in my grip in my hand there, so I knew that if it was just always there, I could always feel it. And then when I came around the corner, I didn't have to think about rolling it off. Like if I roll off too far, I might slip off. So it's just always there for me just to hand over.
Yeah, I like that. Feeling the responsibility for the team. Let's have a look at another clip here.
A few lessons from 4x4 runners on how to pass the baton and get out of the way quickly, because obviously they're very tired as they're finishing, but need to just keep first and foremost in your mind the runners coming in behind and outgoing runners and get out of the way as quickly as possible.
So James McMurray then heading off, and he's done the right thing, I think, set his stall out early here, not just, you know, run within yourself, but the teams that are the big danger, Spain, Portugal perhaps. I'd be surprised if Belarus are still in this, given the
setting your stall early is, you know, the commentary there. And how was that? How did you manage to do that?
So the leading lady, Pam McDonald, she got us pretty much joint in the lead with Belarus. So I was already in a pretty decent position. I had like one or two seconds off the rest of the team, so I didn't have to deal with people like running in front of me and when the changeover. So I got up quite quickly. Get the advantage. Yeah. I don't want them to I don't want to lose that benefit straight away. And if I get a big gap early on, it just knocks them mentally because they have a bigger gap to pick up. Just hit it hard. And then also at the start there's a hill, so if they want to catch me up, they're going to have to run like even harder up that hill than I would. So they're just going to wear themselves out. So it's kind of inviting them to be a bit silly and wear themselves out the top. And then by the time they catch me up, I'll just be able to go. So,
tell us what's tell us.
It certainly has started quickly here, Paula.
Yeah, he's attacking well up the hill as well. You can see him gritting his teeth, trying to keep his sights and his eyes fixed on, not on the top of the hill, but just on the heels of the British runner ahead of him, James McMurray there he looks okay. I think he's comfortable. He's actually extended that gap slightly over the Portuguese team behind him. Belgium now moving through and starting to challenge the Spanish team.
Yeah, McMurray's
Paula Radcliffe there, who knows, more than one or two things about, cross country and long distance running, points out that you are attacking the heel. Now, a heel, in any form of running is not something that you take lightly and attack lightly, but you seem to be accelerating up that hill. What's going on there? How do you manage to do that?
I think because I'm a jet runner, I have quite a lot of power. So, I can get myself up that hill a little bit easier than the long distance runners don't have that kind of power to get themselves up there. It's another thing, like, because at each hill there's like a corner. So if I can get distance on them up the hill and around the corner, when they turn around the corner, I'm even further away. So it just knocks them mentally. And then at the end of the race, I know that there's a downhill. So if I'm tired, I can just use downhill to keep my speed. It's not as bad if I'm tired on the flat, because if I'm on the flat, I can't use the gravity to keep my speed up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the last clip. Let's see how you've run your leg. This was the second leg or the third leg? What leg was this one, James?
Yeah, it was second leg.
Second leg, and it's a team of 4, was it?
Yeah, team of 4. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at this then.
But he's done really well to open things up. Calachugo still isn't too far away, probably about a 4 or 5 second lead for Alex Bell. And Alex has to really attack this early on, then settle down, make sure that she doesn't go off too slowly. Spain, Belgium just fading a little bit. Portugal have gone backwards through the field there. And the French now very much to the fore.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you and your teammates there, for you to be able to be picked for Team GB to do that, you must have been in pretty good shape, over the season. But tell me, what was your physical state at the end of your own leg before you passed on to your teammate there? What was your state at the end of your run, mentally, physically, emotionally? Share with us what you were going through with that.
I think it's just like, really. I was physically tired because I've worked myself going up all the hills and everything. But I think the main thing is just like the relief that you have so much pressure. When you're running for your own, it's okay if you mess up because it's just you that's affected. Whereas in this team event, if you mess up, it's 3 other people that could be costed a medal. And then obviously, if you're getting the baton in the lead, and you don't hand it back in the lead, then it's you haven't had a great run, have you? So yeah, I managed to hold my position, got a few seconds further ahead. Just relief. Yeah, it's good. And then at the end, once we won, it was like just sort of happiness that my first senior appearance for GB, and I had a medal out of it. It's good.
So what color was your medal, for you and your teammates in the end there? You
we won the race in the end, which is good. And Belarus actually came second, so they did quite well. We had like 3 other really good runners. The women's were actually both like really top runners. So we had a really strong team going in. I think we were probably favourites to win.
Now, bringing us to the main subject of our talk tonight, which is running related injuries.
Yeah.
Athletes running on a flat, even surface, get injuries. What is the situation with cross country? With all the undulating terrain. I would imagine that the risks for injuries are higher. What is your understanding, or what is your view regarding that, injuries in cross country versus other forms of track and field?
I think there's just always a bit more risk for, I guess, like traumatic injuries. Because if you're going over uneven ground, you can have hills that are on a slope. There's always a risk that you can go over in your ankle. those kind of things. Yeah, I guess, you know, it's just kind of, I think the most prominent cause of injury in running is the change in training. So it's probably not the change in or the actual cross country race itself. It's when you change your training to train for the cross country race. So, you know, you're coming off the back of the track season where you're running on road and a hard track, and then like with a few weeks, you're now moving onto mud, onto grass. You're running at night, so doing lots and lots of long miles on the pavement. It's that change in load which can then cause the injury. And likewise, if you go from cross country season into the track season, or even like road running season, you'll be spending most of your time in the winter on grass, and then that's like soft ground. And then if you go onto track, it's going to be a lot harder. So you might, you'll be putting more load through the bone, and then if you're picking up speed as well, so training for shorter distances, you could be putting more load on the tendons. So that's when you can get issues with like Achilles tendinopathies or plantar fasciitis, those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, James, when we come back, because I'm going to give you a water break, you're going to be talking, your own experiences and advice on running injuries. Could you just, before we go away, tell us, what sort of injuries are you going to talk about? A list of them, as it were.
Yeah, sure. So I think what we could do is start from like the bottom of the body and then work our way up. I'll talk about plantar fasciitis, what it is, what other injuries that could be around that area. Then move up towards so like the Achilles tendon, so Achilles tendinopathy, and then move up even more up to the sort of shin. So you might have heard what shin splints are. So what exactly are shin splints? And then we'll move up to the knee. So we're talking about patellofemoral pain. So that could be sort of pain in the front of the knee, so on your kneecap. You could also get like patellar tendinopathy. And then if you have time, we might even go up towards the hip. So it's quite common in runners to get sort of lateral hip pain. And then also runner's knee. If we have time, we could cover runner's knee. And what exactly is runner's knee?
Yeah. Okay, James, have a glass of water. When we come back, we're starting right from the bottom. Yeah, James. Now, the foot is an important, part of the body in running. In that, it's the first point of contact, between the human body and the ground, and a lot of exchanges, are taking place there between what the body is generating as a force and the medium upon which that force is being expressed, which is the ground. And if it's in a cross country, then that looks like everything else different. On the track, that's also something different. Now, that tends to bring, with it, like everything else, it brings with it some of the, some issues there. What is the common injury, that, runners face relative to that, from the foot standpoint?
So from the foot, so a common one runners can get in the foot is plantar fasciitis, or what you might have heard of plantar fasciitis. So it's kind of pain that you'll get in the bottom of your heel. It can also be called plantar fasciopathy. So many of these injuries have two different names, and basically it's an irritation of the plantar fascia that runs on the bottom. So imagine that's your heel. It runs sort of from your heel bone up to your toes, and it's caused by the thickness. So the name plantar fasciitis, the itis in that name sort of gives you an idea that it could be inflammation, but it's not actually completely correct. It's more the thickening of the actual fascia. So yeah, so it's very much related to load and capacity. So if you're putting your fascia through a lot of load and it can't handle that that amount of load, then it's probably going to be get injured. You might also hear that if you have like a heel spur, it could cause your plantar fasciitis or fasciopathy, which it can, but only about half the people that have the plantar fascia pain actually have a heel spur, and many people that have a heel spur don't actually have plantar fasciitis pain. So it's not always down to like a bone issue. It can be multiple different factors. Like age can be a factor. Changing in hormones can be a factor. So yeah, it's normally it's plantar fasciitis when you have pain is like sort of in the bottom of your heel, right where the plantar fascia attaches onto it, and it's quite common to get pain during the morning. So you wake up one morning and your foot just like feels really sore in there, or maybe you've been sitting down and not been active for a long period of time, and then you get up and start moving, and you get a lot of pain in that area, just at the bottom of your heel. And then as you wake up out of bed, start walking around, the pain will start to wear off.
Yeah.
And then another thing that suggests it could be plantar fasciitis is you get pain sort of when you push into that area. So if you're palpating or pushing into it and it's sore there, then it could be that injury.
Yeah.
And then there's other injuries around there that suggest it could be something else. So you can have you can get like sort of a stress fracture in that area, which is probably a little bit more serious. And the way it's a stress fracture is you get pain at rest. So even when you're just sitting down doing nothing, you'll still just get like a throbbing pain there. So it probably shows that it might not be plantar fasciitis. You can get fat pad atrophy. So around your heel, you have a little bit of tissue, and it's called a fat pad, and it just helps to prevent sort of irritation on your tendon and your bone. And the way you can differentiate it is when you've got plantar fasciitis, when you start to walk, the pain reduces. But if you've got a fat pad, the longer you walk, the worse the pain gets. And then you can also get like neuro pain around there. So that'll be where your nerve runs around the side of your ankle, can get like impinged a little bit, and you might get some numbness sort of sensations there. So there's different injuries you can get. But the way if you're confused about what you have, if you went to see a physio, the way they'll be able to differentiate is they'll sort of take like a history of exactly what you're feeling. They'll do a few tests, to see which ones it could be, and then they'll give you a treatment plan.
Yeah. Now, it is a common injury and a very frustrating one for most runners, in that it's kind of stubborn in its own way. Now, is there a way of preventing this? And when you have not been able to prevent it and you've got it, what advice would you give? How do you deal with it when you've got it? First, how do you prevent it if it's possible? And when you've got it, how do you manage it? How do you get it sorted out?
Yeah, so if you have plantar fasciitis or fasciopathy, the best thing you can do is just to rest it. So you don't want to sort of go for a run and then it makes it painful, and then the next day it's sore, and then you wait a few days rest, and then you go for another run. So the best thing is kind of just stop doing anything that's painful. So say if you're got a job where you have to stand up for long periods of time and it's painful when you do that, try and sit down as much as possible. If it's sore when you go for a run, just stop running, and then you want to sort of keep it to a pain that's less than 4 out of 10. So say if you can run sort of like 5-10 minutes and it's less than 4 out of 10 during the run, and then after the run it doesn't go above that, then it's probably okay to run that amount. But if you go any further than that and it starts hurting more, then don't run any further, just stay at that level. Another thing is plantar fascia, it responds quite well to stretching. So in the morning and throughout the day, try and do it as many times throughout the day, is just stretch the plantar fasciitis. So it connects over your heel and onto your toes. So what you can do is get your ankle onto your other knee. So say if you're sitting in a chair, just bring your foot up onto your knee and then grab your toes with your hands and then just pull your toes backwards. And that, you can hold that stretch, for 30 seconds, do it a few times, and do it throughout the day. Another stretch you can do is stand next to a wall and then put your toes up against the wall, so you're sort of stretching the plantar fascia that way. And then if you bend your knee forward, you'll then stretch the plantar fascia, and then you also stretch your calf, so you get a good stretch throughout the whole sort of lower leg complex. That's one good thing you can do. So those two things, stopping activity and doing stretching, they're good ways at reducing the pain levels, but it's going to be kind of short-term fix. So what you want to do is build up the strength very slowly, so then when you do get back to running, your plantar fascia can actually handle that load. So your physio will probably give you an exercise program to help do that. So they'll give you really basic strengthening exercises first, just what we call isometric. So you could do sort of standing on a stair without moving. So isometric is a contraction where your muscle isn't moving. So if I'm doing this, that's concentric, whereas if I'm holding like that, that's isometric. So you can do just standing on a stair, holding your body weight on your two legs. Regress it. You can then just do it on the one leg that hurts, and then you can slowly go into doing calf raises. And then you can do other things. So you have intrinsic muscles in your foot. So imagine this is my foot. You'd have small muscles that run down here. If you do like towel squeezes with your toes, it builds up these muscles, and that will just help support like the plantar fascia. So you want to build up your exercise really slowly, and then once you're strong enough and your physio thinks you're ready, then you can start doing the running, and then you'll build up the running nice and slowly, so you're not causing any pain.
Great show. We have a few comments here from people that have joined us on the show. Terry is a close friend and fan of the show. He says to prevent plantar fascia, he does sometimes roll a ball under his foot. What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's actually really good. So when I was at uni, I used to get a golf ball, and I used to take my shoes when I was sitting in the library. I used to take my shoes off in the library and then get a golf ball under my foot and just roll it. It's just for like hours, and it actually feels quite nice as well. So it's not only going to prevent you from getting injury, but it's it's quite relaxing. So yeah, it's definitely a good tip there, Terry.
Yeah, I have another comment here, rather a question actually from Kirsty Fraser. Thanks for your comment, Kirsty. Do you have any advice on how to manage a past foot injury or weak ankle when you are building mileage in winter to help prevent further injury? I suppose that could be dealing both with plantar fascia and probably your next sort of injury, which is your Achilles around the ankle joint there. Wants to know.
So there's kind of three things you want to focus on. So you want to focus on like your flexibility, so increasing range of motion, your strength, and then your like proprioception, so your balance. So if you're stretching, you just want to stretch your calf out so you can stand on a step and just let your heel drop down, or you can push against the wall and stretch. And just trying to keep your ankles nice and mobile, so they're not they can sort of manage the load you're putting through them. And then keep your ankles strong. So I normally go by the guide of if you can do like 30 heel raises, then you're probably strong enough, and that's going to decrease your injury quite a lot. There's probably not much any research for that. It's just something anecdotally that I do for myself, and I don't really get calf injuries, so it seems to work for me. Just do lots of calf raises. You can even get under weights and then do calf raises with weights on. Your tendons kind of work. You have to put lots of load through. So if your tendon's really thick, the thicker the tendon, the more load you need to put through. So your Achilles tendon's really thick, so that means you have to put a lot of load through it. Whereas if you compare it to kind of like tendons in your elbow that are really small, you don't want to put too much load through that. So you need to put a lot of load through your Achilles. And then the proprioception kind of stuff is you can do that balance kind of thing work. So something that I do quite a lot is have that top face in front of me, and then standing on one foot and try and touch like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then try and keep my balance so it stops your ankle from pronating too much. They're the three things I kind of focus on to prevent injuries in ankles.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if somebody, I hope Kirsty Fraser, sure, I hope you found some nuggets there from James' experiential insights there for you. Achilles tendon. If someone has got it, what do they need to do? How do they get it sorted? They want to get back to running as soon as possible, like most runners.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
So yeah, it kind of depends on which. So you can have two different types of Achilles tendinopathy. So you can get like a mid Achilles tendinopathy where it'll be sort of in the middle of the tendon. So you'll get your pain in the thicker part of the tendon where near the muscle bulk. And then you can also get an insertional tendinopathy. So that's where you'll get pain like right where the tendon attaches onto the bone. So it's important that you know the difference between the two, because that can decide or differentiate between the treatment you give. So if you have insertional tendinopathy, it can have a compressive role. So if your tendon's getting compressed quite a lot, it doesn't really like that, and then that's going to cause the pain. So if you have, I don't know, if you're a walker and you have walking boots with a high back, and then every time you walk, the back is compressing onto your tendon, that can be an issue. And then if there's some exercise you might get given for mid tendinopathy. So if you're doing hill raises on a step, if you're dropping your heel down, that's okay for mid tendinopathy. But if you're dropping that heel down for an insertional one, it's going to compress that tendon. So it's not going to like it for the insertional tendinopathy. Yeah, so so for treatment, it depends which one you have. But the most important thing that you can do really is just strengthening it. So you want to rest it initially. So you cut back on your running, so you're not getting any pain. Similar to plantar fasciitis, don't let it go above 4 out of 10. And then once it's settled down, start doing your calf raises. Put as much flow through it as possible that you can tolerate, such as weight on your back. You can use like a rucksack and put like weights in the rucksack and work your way up to that. Yeah, and then once you're ready, once you're strong enough, then you can slowly increment the running back in. There's also research on nutrition as well. So tendon healing.
Kirsty Fraser, they are saying thank you very much for the answer. That was very helpful regarding the issues with the ankle joint and how to prevent that over the winter training period. So there you go, James.
Nice.
Terry also has come back here, and Terry has got this. He thinks that a balance board is a great way to prevent ankle issues by strengthening. Is this something that you would recommend?
Yeah. So in those reasons I said range of movement, strength, and then proprioception. So proprioception is basically balance. So that balance board is really good for your like proprioception and your ankle receptors to know where it kind of is in the space. So yeah, balance board is something really good that you can use.
Yeah.
If you don't have one of those, you can just lay out cushions and use a cushion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we need to move on, James. Otherwise, we'll not get there right up to the hip, buddy. Listen, shin splints as their code, and you guys, you professionals with the healthcare, are not exactly happy with the term shin splints, because I think there's a variability to it. What's your take on shin splints, and why are they so common?
Yeah, so shin splints is a bit of an umbrella term, really. Like, it's just shin splints are just kind of pain in the front of the shin, and there's multiple things that cause that. So the main thing that sort of runners have is called medial tibial stress syndrome. So medial means middle, so like the inside, and then tibial is the tibia, so that is the shin bone, is the tibia, and then stress syndrome. So that basically means you're putting the bone through too much stress. So this is when you get pain on the actual bone of your shin, sort of on the medial side, so the inside of your bone. So not on the front muscle. So if you have pain on the muscle bit, on the sort of lateral side of your shin, it would probably be something else. Medial tibial stress syndrome is sort of irritated because of overtraining. And if you increase your volume and intensity by a lot, then it's going to, give you pain on the front of that shin. again, it's important to differentiate between other injuries because you can get stress fractures in that area. But if your pain is like sort of like widespread and larger than 5 centimeters, then it's probably going to be that medial tibial stress syndrome. But if your pain is really pinpoint on a certain area where it feels really bruised in that one little area, then it could be a stress fracture. Yeah, and then also another way to differentiate between sort of muscle pain is the medial tibial stress syndrome. The pain will get worse as you run, whereas if it's sort of pain in the front of your shin or like a muscular pain, it will normally ease off as you keep running.
You talk about increasing the load there as one of the big culprits, for shin splints.
Yeah.
And that I suppose you're talking about the intensity of training, the volume of training, and maybe even the frequency of training in that equation. Could that be the case? And what advice would you give runners, regarding those 3 variables there?
Yeah. So if you feel like you have pain in the front of your shin and it's on that bony area, then you probably have increased your training by too much. But all you need to really do is just the bone doesn't respond well to keep continue running. So you just have to just stop running completely and then let the bone sort of be less sensitized to that, and then it'll be able to recover. But yeah, so essentially just make sure you monitor your training over time. And then if you ever feel like you have these kind of niggles or anything, just take a step back, let it settle down, let it recover, and then slowly progress it back up.
What's your view on it? It just seems that shin splints is fairly common among the youth and junior athletes, young athletes. It seems to rear its ugly head there more often than not. What would be the cause and why that age group really?
Yeah. So obviously children and young people, their bodies sort of develop at different rates. So their bones will sort of grow quicker than their musculature. So that's where you get quite a lot of tendon issues in young people, because as their bones grow, it kind of stretches out the tendons, and then their muscles aren't as strong, so they'll get more pain in that area. And likewise, if their bones are growing quickly, they're just a bit more susceptible to these kind of pains, because if they're doing a lot of exercise, they're probably not going to be able to sort of develop strong bone quick enough. So yeah, that's probably why children that are growing get that kind of pain. So it's really common in teenagers when they're going through a growth spurt. So if your child's shot up a good amount of centimeters in the last month or two, they'll probably be more susceptible to get those kind of pains a month later. So you don't have to stress about it. Just let them do a little bit less exercise, and then the pain should, once their body evens out growth, their pain should reduce, and they'll be able to start running back up again.
Yeah, I will just zero in a little bit on that, because I get to work with lots of junior athletes, and that is really a recurring problem there. What would your advice be to athletes and parents who find themselves in this situation of shin splints and they are going through that growth spurt? Because it's normal, because as you pointed out there, they are teenage, they're just getting into their teens, and they're growing strong, they're enjoying their sport, and if anything, they're beginning to see their performances going up. And so it becomes a bit of a difficult situation for them to stop training, because they're getting this reward by training and they're performing better. Their performance seems to be getting better, and yet shin splints are just behind the corner. How do you strike that balance?
I think it's important just to monitor their training. It's a common theme. You've probably realised that now. But if someone goes through a growth spurt, be mindful that their body's probably under a little bit more risk of injury now. So scale back the training a little bit. It doesn't. If they have a growth spurt, it doesn't mean you have to stop completely. Just scale it back a little bit. you know, maybe if they're doing 2 or 3 sessions a week, just drop down to one. Try and have a bit more variability in what they're doing. So, you know, kids probably like to have multiple sports. So don't, you know, do like one sport like loads. Get like if it's hurting them doing athletics, maybe get them in the pool a little bit more, do a bit more swimming. Yeah, I think you just got to remember that they're young and sport is enjoyment. So if they get too caught up on, I guess, competing at a young age, yeah, it's just, yeah, how should I say? It's not like the end of the world if they're not competing now, because they still got plenty of years ahead of them, and it's probably better for you to, you know, nip it in the bud now before it becomes like a chronic issue for them.
Thanks, James, for that. You know, for that view. There's lots of wisdom in that. You know, it's you know, sometimes, you know, you can sense some air of impatience on both the young athlete and even their parents as well. Sometimes, you know, just to keep them training and competing. You know, when they are in this, you know, in this very vulnerable growth period, as it were. All right, Jamie, I'll give you time to catch your breather. When we come back, how about talking about the runner's knee, whatever that is? James, runner's knee, what is it? How can we prevent it?
Yeah, so runner's knee, as in the name, it's common in runners. So that's why it's called runner's knee. But essentially, it's also called iliotibial band syndrome. So you may have heard of the ITB, but it's essentially a long piece of sort of connective tissue that runs down the side of your thigh. At the top half, it connects to your glute muscles, and then also a hip flexor called the TFL, so the tensor fascia lata. And when it connects to these muscles, runs down your thigh, and then connects on the underside of your knee. So when you bend your knee, the fiber sort of connects onto that joint there. So when it's bending, you know, the fiber's kind of like that. So it's common that when your knee's bending, as the fiber's there, it's just flicking over that bone. So if you're running a lot and your ITB is quite taut by tight muscles up in your hips, then it's going to be flicking on that bone. It will cause pain. So yeah, you kind of get a bit of a sore pain on the outside of your knee when you start running, and then as you slowly get into your run, it will kind of go away and you'll be okay. And then as soon as you stop, it will just start to ache again, and it'll be right on the outside of your knee, right where you can feel where that sort of tendon connects onto the side. So when you have that, then it's probably most likely going to be runner's knee. Yeah. There's like lots of risk factors for this injury. So, you know, if you're playing sports such as running that have lots of knee flexion extension, so it could be like running, cycling, playing football, then that's a risk factor. When you're running, if you have like when you're tired and when you land, your knee's quite bent when you land, that can cause sort of this pain because you're sort of the ITB band's going to be flicking as you land, and then if your knees are rotated inwards or outwards, that could also cause a bit more friction on that area. Yeah, and then if you run with quite a narrow step rather than like a wider step, if your feet are narrower, then it will cause a bit more sort of this V angle onto your ITB, so it will cause a bit more tightness on the area, and it can cause a bit more flicking. So there's loads of things that you can look at in your running gait that can help prevent this. So yeah.
Okay. Useful points there, James. You know, you point out with the runner's knee, and personally, from a neuromechanics and biomechanics standpoint, like the fact that you point out there is something in an athlete's running gait that could, when they work on it, could alleviate, the potential of them, suffering from a runner's knee. Not something that middle and long distance runners and you guys in cross country spend time on, is it? Working on your technique, is it? Do you?
I do. I do a drill session every week. Well, I try to fit one in anyway. I'm not sure if the recreational runner will do the same, but I try to fit in. I think most people at St Albans, AC, I think they focus in it quite a bit. So yeah, if you have a coach and they're not working on your running form, then you should have a go at them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Jamie.
I was just going to say, so if you want to treat sort of runner's knee, the best thing to do when you first get the pain is just to rest it. So you can put ice on that area and it will decrease the inflammation a little bit. You can do a bit of self-massage on the quad. So the quadriceps, they have a few fibers that connect into that ITB. So if you release those tight fibers in your quadriceps, on the outside of your thigh, that is, and then also into the glutes, as I said, that connects onto it. Then that will just decrease the tightness of the ITB. So if you loosen off those muscles, it won't be so tight. So it's less likely to sort of be irritated on that joint. You can also do stretching for your quad, stretching for your glutes, sort of hip flexor stretching. So that will again help sort of reduce the tightness of that ITB band. And then again, you want to rest. So it's like with every injury. If you're running through pain, it's just going to keep irritating it. So you can run as long as your pain again is below the sort of 3 out of 10. And then once it's all settled down, you can then go into the next phase of treatment. So you'll then work on your strength of your muscles to prevent those sort of biomechanics that could have caused this, such as if you have heavy heel striking or your knees collapsing as you run, or if your hips aren't very, like your hips keep moving a lot. So you want to get a lot of glute exercises, a lot of you want to work on your hamstring strength as well, because it's shown that if you have low hamstring strength, it could increase your risk of this injury. And then again, as we said before, running technique. So you'd start to work on your running technique, and then once the physio or whoever's treating you feels like you're prepared to start running again, then you'll slowly increment running back in. Just do a few miles, work up. It normally takes about 3 to 6 weeks for this issue to kind of go away. But if you keep running on it when it's painful, it could take a lot longer.
Yeah. Well, James, we're getting there. Our time is zeroing in on us. Do we have maybe for the next 3 minutes something like to share with any injuries up on the third tier of the joints, which is the hip joint? What are the injuries that you have experienced, both as an athlete and as a physiotherapist, around the hip joint?
Yeah, so you can get what's called gluteal tendinopathy. So again, it's a tendon pain of your glute muscle. So you'd often get pain like right on the outside of your hips. When you get those sort of bony bits on the outside of your hips, if you press in on them and you have pain, then it's probably a gluteal tendinopathy. So this is very common in women over 50. I think there's a study out there that found that 1 in 4 women over the age of 40 had this pain. So it's like an insertional tendinopathy. So it's where that tendon meets the bone, and it's caused by compression. So if you're lying at bed at night and you're lying on that side, it's going to be compressing the tendon into that bone, and it'll cause the pain. So that's another sign that you could have this injury. The reason why running could be linked to it is because if you have bad running mechanics in your hips, when you run, your tendon will be like sort of flicking over that bone a little bit, and it's just causing irritation and pain. If you have like a lot of external rotation, so you'd see, if someone runs and their knees are knocking together, that'd be a sign that they probably have had this injury before or might get it in the future. because when your knees go in, it's stretching that muscle on your glutes over that bone, and then it's causing that pain. So one thing that running coaches or physios can do is try and improve your running technique, so your knees stay forward, and it will reduce that pain or the sort of flicking on the outside of your hips. Yeah, and it's it's similar to the other injuries. Stop your running, reduce the pain, increase the strength in the glutes in that area, improve your running biomechanics, and then within a few weeks or a few months, then you'll start to feel better.
Super duper advice there, James. Sort your biomechanics out, get your strength levels up, and you will minimize the risk of all these common running injuries that James has so kindly and in a brilliant way been able to shed some light on for us here tonight. Any last tips, James, that you'd like to give runners, on running injuries, or how to prevent them, or just how to cope with them when they've got them?
Yeah, I guess the main thing is when you have pain, there's obviously a reason for it. So you have to just fight that urge not to keep running, because if you do, it's just gonna get worse and it's not gonna go away. So yeah, just stop. You don't have to stop running completely. Just only run so it's not painful. Like if it can be there, like very minor. So it's less than 3 out of 10, but don't go any more than that, because if you do that, it just isn't going to improve. And then once it's settled down, you just got to do the strength work. If you don't do the strength work, then the issue isn't going to change. Yeah. That's my key tip. if you have a niggle or an injury.
Yeah. What's your take on some of these, warriors, training warriors and running warriors? I'll just run through the pain and, after a little run, I'm fine. What's your advice on that?
How do you mean? How they?
Yeah, they've got niggles, they've got pain, but so I'll just run through it and it will get better.
Yeah, I think if you have experience and like a niggle isn't like a true niggle, so if something feels tight, then you're probably okay. Or if you have problems, you're probably okay. But if you get that weird feeling that you've never really felt before, then it's probably something that's a little bit serious, and you're gonna have rehab for. So I think that's probably the key advice. I had last 2 seasons ago. I had like a hamstring tendinopathy. I had this weird pain in the back side of my knee. And it wasn't really that bad. I didn't really know what it was, and I just carried on training anyway. And then, on the whole, a week later, I could barely run. So, so I knew I didn't it. So yeah.
On that note, on a very personal experience note, there, James, what's left for me is to say thank you very much for your, for your time to start with, and for sharing your experience both as an athlete and also as a physiotherapist. But I tell you something, there's a community of runners out there who think, great advice today, but that's mostly for middle to long distance runners. Could we get you back to look at the short distance runners and common injuries for sprinters and all these power athletes?
Yeah, I think so. Sounds good.
All right, then. There you heard it. We will bring James back to have a look and share with us, the injuries that are associated with the speed and with power, and how to prevent them and how to manage them when you've got it. James, good show, buddy. Thanks for having you on the show tonight.
No worries. See you later, Sam.